My background is some 32 years in defence. I was a uniformed officer in the Air Force and my speciality is logistics, and I had various appointments in the last 10 years in the joint arena. After that I was the Managing Director of Air Services Australia, so a bit of an aviation theme happening there. And then more recently, in the last 12 months, I was appointed as the Northern Territory National Security and Defence Advocate. And it goes to my background really about defence. I have experience of the Territory. My first job was up there as a brand new flying officer. The Northern Territory government has released a defence and national security strategy, and that's about how the government is supporting the defence and defence industry sectors. We're focusing on things like making sure policy settings are correct, so that encourages businesses to start up in the Territory, and also encouraging people to come to the Territory and live. So that's one area. We're also focusing on strategic relationships, particularly with our near neighbours and also the United States. So that's a very important part, to make sure that people understand that visiting forces are very welcome to the Territory, and so that they can make use of the facilities there, such as our training ranges. We're also very focused on defence families. A lot of our defence people who are posted to the Territory will be deployed during their time in the Territory. So it's about making sure the defence families are well supported, everything from having mothers groups and fathers groups to making sure that they have access to appropriate health support, and also the schooling sector. So we are focusing on that. And it's also about strategic investments. For example, the Northern Territory Government has committed to investing $100 million in building a ship lift at East Arm Wharf. So that's quite a demonstration of the level of support to encourage the maritime sector to grow, not just for defence, of course, but certainly in support of defence. And I think that's a very clear example of what has come out of the strategy. I think there are three things, and they are firstly proximity. And what I mean by that is proximity to our region, to the Indo-Pacific region, very close in fact to all of that area up north. So that's the first thing. The second thing then follows is access, and that brings it both coming into the country but also going up to the north. Thirdly, the Northern Territory is vast, huge spaces of land, and that gives an advantage in terms of all the training ranges that we have up there, instrumented ranges for the Army, Air Force, and also space. As we move into the arena of space nowadays, there's a lot of space up there, and it's very close to the equator and a great place for launching satellites. We have a large presence of the Air Force there, with the Hornet aircraft flying out of RAF Base Tyndall. We have one brigade up here. We also have Norforce, and of course the patrol boats. So Army, Navy, Air Force all there. In terms of the money that's spent on defence, or by defence on the defence sector, it represents something like 7.2% of the gross state product, which is significant money. Translated into real money, that's about $1.6 billion. So, and we also see that increasing, according to forecasts, to about $2.4 billion. We also have very obvious presence of the US Marines in the Territory training about 6 months of the year, and that continues to grow. Last year it was about 1,600 Marines that came. This year we're expecting even more. And we'll see increased cooperation with the United States Air Force, so that the Australian Air Force will continue to work with the United States Air Force to train and demonstrate interoperability. Most firms who work in that sector, that's not the only sector they work in. So that probably is something that's slightly different to the rest of the jurisdictions in Australia. A lot of the firms who have the skills that can work in the defence sector are also working in mining, construction, also oil and gas. So it's very difficult to say firms are just in defence, so they diversify. The other thing I'd say, we've been doing a lot of work on identifying the actual capabilities of the firms. So I'll give you an example. In the maritime sector, we worked with the Industry Capability Network to actually survey what is there in the Territory. So we've identified 500 firms that have various skills that are appropriate to the maritime sector. So for example, welding, drilling, that sort of thing. So that's the capability we have in the maritime sector, which is growing and supporting not just defence but also oil and gas, mining and the pearling fleet, and also fishing. We're also doing some work around the aviation space because as we move into the future, we will see the Joint Strike Fighter working out of Tyndall, also the Triton aircraft. So we're looking at what capabilities we have and where we need to build the skill sets to support those sorts of aircraft. Don't forget that it's a rather small jurisdiction. We've got about 120,000 people. But one thing that Territory is very good at is when they need to surge, they grab workforce from down south. I think there's one thing to say about the workforce that supports defence, and it's that it's diversified. So it's not just in defence, but also in the other sectors, oil and gas, etc. And what that's done is improve the level of qualifications of our workforce because, of course, the oil and gas sector is as exacting as defence is in terms of supporting equipment. And I think that gives the workforce flexibility. So, for example, 10% of their business might be in support of defence and the rest is in other areas. So I think that's a strength because they're diversified, and when there are times that are lean for defence, they're still working and developing their skills and capacity, and then when the projects come online with defence, they can swing and match that demand. There's at least 500 that we've identified that do or can support in the maritime sector, and we're just going through that work to catalogue in the aviation sector. Certainly in the construction sector, very strong, very many number of firms there. For example, one of our local firms, Sunbuilt, just won a significant contract with the United States Force Posture Initiative to build a hangar at the airfield. The outlook is looking very healthy and very optimistic, in fact. We're looking very closely at any decisions that Defence makes about the offshore patrol vessels. So, for example, we do know that the plans are that 6 of these new vessels will be home ported in Darwin. So we're very excited about that. And that also helps us plan around building the maritime sector. So I talked about the ship lift, but also developing a marine support and services area to allow for that support. We also see, for example, the Joint Strike Fighter coming to the Territory in about 2021, and also the Triton unmanned aerial vehicle. Darwin and the Northern Territory is a very attractive prospect for businesses to be. As I said, I think it hinges on a couple of things. It's around geographic proximity to the region. We are the only capital city in the north of Australia, and very, very close to tens of millions of people and the population up north. So in terms of businesses having access to the region, Darwin is an excellent place to be there for that. It's also being the face to south of Australia and access to the infrastructure, so through the port, down on the rail, and also some of the highways. So it's all about access and proximity and geography. Darwin is closer to Singapore than it is to Sydney, so it's very much a tropical paradise, really, and the lifestyle is fabulous. You know, the weather is beautiful most of the time. Yes, we do have a few weather events up there, but in terms of lifestyle, a lot of sport activity up there, fishing, tourism, so it's a wonderful place to be, great place to work and also to live.